boas. They might even have main deck river boas. Okay. Well, back to the next match. Pretty reactive and slow hand, but I do have all my mana. I have Augur into Ninja to generate some card advantage. Does seem pretty strong. Ponder has the better chance of setting up Augur, because I can put this lightning bolt on top of my deck. Having this spell starter on top of my deck is kind of a legacy habit of playing around Thoughtseize and Cabal Therapy and all that. Streamer to good. Oh, what were you, my previous opponent? Or what? Oh, no, I punted already. I just told you 3 punts that I made in the previous match. Maybe my standards are too high for what counts as a punt, but I definitely punted. Affinity or Boros? Well, in both cases, they should just follow up either with Prophetic Prism. Well, both matchups could just follow up with Prophetic Prism. So I think I want to Augur and not keep open Spellstutter. Yeah. The Lightning Bolt we knew about. And the other two are whatever. Okay, so Affinity. It's probably like the better matchup, but the less interesting one. I would have preferred for it to be Boros, just so that I can experience the Boros matchup from the other side, which I have so far not yet played. I have played it a bunch from the Boros side, of course, but I haven't played it from the Delver side. So let's see, is it good enough to get a Ninja hit in? There's not a lot I can spell stutter regardless. The downside of getting Ninja hit in is that I can potentially set up Ninja with protection from Galvanic Blast the following turn if I just combine Ninja with spell stutter. Yeah, okay, let's brainstorm and then go like Ash Barrens. None of these are particularly useful. Get rid of double land or land spell stutter. Yeah, I guess the second spell stutter becomes useful because it counters 2 drops. So I'll get rid of double land. So yeah, I'll wait a turn because the spell stutter is unlikely to do much in the matchup unless I do have the fairy count to start countering Atox and Carapace Forgers, which I might end up having if my first spell stutter lives. But like the first one is pretty useless unless there's Galvanic Blast. And Ninja makes it so that my opponent is likely to want to Galvanic Blast because I'm giving them a target that they really have to kill. So that's why I wanted to hold on to the Ninja, because if I tap out 2 of my 3 mana for Ninja this turn, then they just Galvanic Blasted before I untap, and then the spell stutter ends up being a sad little useless fairy once again. Though, wait, do I want to spell stutter end of turn now? Because then I can counter an Atox or a Carapace Forger, and that's actually pretty important. I think so. I draw the excess land that I don't really want, but yeah, I think it's like enough tempo that I want to really be pushing when my opponent's missing land drops. And also it sets up protection from Atox, which is the card that I'm most scared of. Now it's interesting whether I want to keep open Island Mountain or Island. I think I'm keeping open Island Mountain because that's the technically correct thing to do, but I'm giving my opponent information that my hand involves spells that is bright and not counterspell. So if they have like the decision between Carapace Forger and Mirror Enforcer, for example, where one of them plays around Spellstutter and the other doesn't, then they know for sure that they have to respect Spellstutter and not respect counterspell. So definitely there's some downside to keeping this mountain open, and there's not actually a lot of upside to keeping the mountain open because most of my opponent's creatures would not die to it. Basically I'm only killing Frogmites, So the most likely target for the lightning bolt is going to be my opponent's face to close out the game as quickly as possible. So yeah, it's possible I should just be keeping open double island and not even bothering with the lightning bolt. Okay, so we want to cycle here because there's island on top of my deck that I don't want to draw. I mean, I'm getting an island here, but my next draw step is clean because of it. Fling, okay. It's always interesting whether they run Team or Battle Rage or Fling. But yeah, with them constantly missing land drops, even with double Thoughtcast, that's pretty insane. I mean, the deck is pretty low on lands, but it's still pretty insane for them to miss that many land drops. Okay, let's see what my ninja offers me first. Though I could have preordained into another ninja. I'm not in that much of a hurry. So now they're at virtual 7 life. So I want to hit them for 3 and then 4 the follow-up. So I think I can set up my augur with preordain. Wow, extra bolt is useful. Delver is also pretty useful. Okay, so let's go top and then don't augur. Then start bolting them in the face because my red mana is pretty limited. Yeah, that was pretty insane preordain. No Gear Seekers up and they can't cast yet. Somber Hover card? Or they made the wrong mana. That would make more sense. Okay, they died. Yeah, their draw was very underwhelming. They did like nothing. And now we get to board all the great cards, though unlike the previous matchups, this is a matchup where I have very many good cards and a lot of trouble figuring out how I fit them into my deck. Like Aatrox and Fling, and Galvanic Blast, Gearseeker Serpent, Thoughtcast, Metallic Rebuke, and Hydroblast of my opponent, Artifact lands, pretty obvious, and all of their artifact creatures, though we care more about Aatrox and Carapace Forger. So I think lightning bolts are awful. They help me raise a little bit, but I want to throw them out of my deck, especially because I don't want to be too reactive. And then I could see just cutting the Spell Stutters, but they're probably more useful in the post-board games when there's a lot more like back and forth of Hydroblasts and Pyroblasts and Galvanic Blasts and all that stuff being thrown at each other. Then I will end up finding a target with Spell Stutter more easily. I guess Augur is also pretty bad because it doesn't really block much. I mean, it can jump block against the 4/4s to buy me some time while I'm racing in the air, but it doesn't necessarily block anything favorably, like only Frogmites, and Frogmites are already the least of our concerns. So then, I mean, maybe some ninjas because they will also only get their first hit in. Though I guess if I'm boarding into all removal, like a very reactive build, then I want some ninjas to create card advantage in the meantime. Maybe just have like 2 Pyroblast instead of 3, because they're not that great. Sure. I mean, they're great whenever they are. This is 61 cards though. Still. Okay, I'll cut one Spell Stutter, I don't know. I'm really not sure how to board. There's just way too many cards that are good. What was I trying to say? Oh yeah, like Pyroblast is super good whenever it counters Thoughtcast, but if you miss your timing window where they Thoughtcast, especially because your red mana is pretty scarce as well, you take some turns to find red mana and then you might not even be holding it open on the turn where they Thoughtcast because you had to scratch something, then it can turn out to be super awkward to have it stuck in their hand. Basically you're like sitting there praying for them to cast a Gearseeker Serpent, and they might even be boarding those out in anticipation of Pyroblast, I mean. So yeah, those things can turn out to be bad for you. Also, Scrap makes it so that you're much more interested in hitting your 4th land drop quickly because you want this to be a Flame Slash. Hydroblast is decent. Is there a point in keeping open spells that are already... I mean, it does interact well with Prophetic Prism, but I don't really have much else to do with my turn. It's also very good against Carapace Forger, of course. Okay, let's attack first and see what they do. Whether they want to Galvanic Blast this down or something. I guess they were more inclined to do so if I have the land already on the board. No, maybe not. Then they are inclined to play around Ninja. Maybe they're inclined to both beginning of combat, so I can't Ninja, but most likely it's better for them to just let me Ninja and shoot down my Ninja, so they would still end up not casting the removal spell if they have one. So I think Fairy Miscreant, Preordain, Passive Spells that are open, and Hydroblast Preordain are all reasonable things to be doing. I think I'll go with the Fairy Miscreant, that builds my board the best. And the scariest of the 2-drops is Atalk, which I can still deal with a Hydroblast after I tap out this turn. They put an Atalk onto the board, then I untap and Hydroblast it. Okay, so there's the land drops up until the 4th land drop that I was really looking for, so this seems like an easy top. Okay, well, that I could have Spell Stutter, though I don't care too much about it. I would really prefer to Spell Stutter a 2-drop whenever possible. That I would have wanted to Hydroblast or Spell Stutter, though it still like trades 1-for-1 because one of the Fairy Miscreants drew me a card. So it's not a huge blowout, but it's unfortunate for me that my fairy count has been diminished, and then my Spell Stutter is less likely to catch a target. Basically need them to run out like another Chromatic Star or something. So unfortunate sequencing and running into there something like a 2-off sideboard card or so. Definitely ended up punishing me there. But I still kind of like my position here with them not doing anything remotely scary on their turn. Spell Starter number 2 and Evolving Wilds. I definitely don't want the Evolving Wilds. Second Spell Starter is pretty borderline. Because it does make the first one better. So like, I'm unhappy with the one that is in my hand, and I'm unhappy with the one that is on top of my deck. But maybe the sum of them is better than having like a Spell Starter Sprite and a random card. Like basically the value of this card is higher because it also makes the value of the card that I'm guaranteed to be stuck with higher due to synergy. Not sure if that's enough. I think it's not. I'm much more interested in drawing Counterspell and a way to enable my Delver, another Ninja if this Delver sticks on the board. I think I'm keeping Hydroblast open though, rather than casting Preordain. Also, that might give me the ability to Spell Stutter a Galvanic Blast or something. In the best case. Sure. Prop Might, you got it. Well, that one gets scredded down. Yep. That one I don't like to see. That is the worst case. Now the interesting decision is whether I want to wait on my scred until my own turn, because my opponent might have Hydroblast and then I would want to Spell Stutter it. Or Dispel, I guess. And if I scred at end of turn, it's much more mana efficient for me, because I'm using up my red mana, but I reduce the chance that I get to Spell Stutter something. I think I'll wait on the scred. That can end up backfiring for me, we'll see. Let's look for that counterspell. Well, a null has to be decent. Though there's still a lot of scary cards in the matchup that a null doesn't hit, but this seems like a top where the Ponder helps me transform the Delver. And I guess I want to do it on my opponent's upkeep, so that they have to spend mana on their turn to deal with my spell starter. Though I'm opening myself up to Electricity, but Hydroblast already gives me some protection from Electricity. Okay, let's try. It might end up not making any difference. If they have Metallic Rebuke, it also makes a lot of positive impact for me, that they have to cast it on their upkeep instead of my turn, and don't get the untap afterwards. Okay, this is a race I'm comfortable with. Makes the race a little less comfortable for me, though still not that happy about countering it. Maybe I should have some augurs in my deck just so that their frogmites are laughably bad. Usually when I was on the affinity side of this matchup, I boarded out my frogmites because they're so terrible, but if my opponent keeps all of them in, that makes my augur better, that makes their frogmites worse, and so on and so forth. So basically it's like a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors, where having frogmite against no augurs is good for my opponent, having frogmites against augurs is super good for me. And yeah, basically whoever wins that like coin flip of these two cards matching up against each other ends up being incredibly ahead. But I don't really want to annul it, but letting my opponent have 4 power on the board against my 3 power flyer makes it much more difficult for me to raise. And it seems unlikely that they have another artifact creature for this turn, so I guess I'll cash it in. But it could also backfire. They really shouldn't have another Murn Forcer because it was already free the previous turn, so I guess they were out of artifact creatures and then top decked Frogmite for this turn. Yeah, so that makes it very unlikely for the annul to find a target right away, though it being in my hand can offer me some protection on later turns. But I think staying ahead in the race is important enough. Well, that was exactly what I was trying to make happen so that my spell stutter becomes good, but the timing of it was slightly unfortunate to me. Seems more important to keep counter spell mana open here, yeah, exactly, than have the 1 red, because I don't think I'll be forced into casting a red spell. Basically the only way for this to backfire was if I find a Pyroblast and then they Thoughtcast or something, and I can't cast the Pyroblast. Probably better to have the counter spell than the spell stutter. So they currently don't have a Murn Forcer in their hand. So spells that would allow me to counter Carapace, Forger, or Atok top decks, as well as Prophetic Prism, and then, well, with Spellstutter, though it can be disrupted by another Galvanic Blast. But drawing the counterspell later, I think I'm going for the high risk line of drawing the Spellstutter first, because otherwise the Spellstutter is less likely to get full value. And here a lot of my opponent's top decks still run into the Spellstutter, and then I have counterspell protection open for any of their later top decks. Like the downside of it, like if I draw counterspell first, then my opponent casts a 2-drop. I'm pretty much priced into counterspelling the 2-drop, and then my Spellstutter doesn't get value, or 1-drop. And here I can freely fire off the Spellstutter, hoping they don't electrocute me, of course. And then afterwards I have a counterspell for anything that I can be a little bit more picky with, because... oh, goddamn. Well, no, never mind, that's fine. Yeah, this is the scariest card, but they didn't have a fling. Also, they didn't have enough artifacts for a fling yet. They can sacrifice 12 things and deal... or 12 points of power with 6 things, and then deal 13 to me with the fling by tapping this, or this, for mana. But yeah, I'll start racing in the air and hydroblast the ATOG and everything's great. So against Fling I'm at 3. What? Am I not? Did I miscount? No, they're just bolting my Delver, sure. So then they're out of cards and I have a counterspell. Though we are pretty much exactly even in the race. I could have tried to let them sacrifice more things to it, but even if they have a 1 power creature on the board that they never sacrifice anything to, that's already bad for me. Because like here I have 2 damage against their 2 damage, and I'm getting my hits in first. But if they deal 3 damage against my 2 damage, I'm already falling behind. So I think I had to Hydroblast and not try to bait my opponent into making any kind of sacrifice. Also, it looks incredibly obvious. Okay, so I think all the risks I took off of that Ponder kind of worked out for me, but I'm still in a difficult position here. We're both empty-handed on a very even board. But I knew I was drawing Island, I think, from the Ponder. And my opponent's deck is a little bit more threat dense, and their threats alone are a little bit more impactful. They have a bunch of 4/4s and they have a lot of 1/1 flyers. But I have a little bit more library manipulation, so like Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, Gush, Ninja of the Deep Hours, all of those can be devastating top decks, allowing me to chain from one spell into the other. So we're in a pretty close position here, I would say. Yeah, Gush is great. It's possible I should have played my Island, because there's more Gushes in my deck than there's Brainstorms. I'm very used to holding on to extra lands for Brainstorms, but in a deck that only has a single Brainstorm in it, that often ends up not being correct. Like, you occasionally get punished for running out the land, but it's much more frequently that you get rewarded for playing out the land. So I have to kind of train myself out of that habit, which is a good habit in Legacy, but a bad habit with this deck. I have to rethink the way that I evaluate land drops. Okay, now my position feels pretty amazing though. I have Spellstutter Stride 4/3, which is the same as Spellstutter Stride 4/2 through a Galvanic Blast or something. And I'm very easily winning the race. They have to trade Frogmite for my Ninja, and then I still get to put the second Ninja onto the board. Though I'm not certain what I'm bouncing. Still feels worth to make this attack and trade with the Frogmite, because it opens up the second Ninja to get a second hit in next turn. Probably still correct to bounce Spellstutter, but it's clunky to get them both back onto the board. Fling? What the hell? Opponent, you know I have Spellstutter in hand. How is this a good plan? I don't get it. Yeah, I guess it's like they're empty-handed. It's still better for me to Spellstutter this rather than let them resolve it and keeping open Spellstutter for their turn that is not even guaranteed to do anything. Seems like not only a desperate but pretty hopeless plan. I don't know. I mean, the upside is they get to resolve a 2-drop if they draw 1 now, because they baited out the Spellstutter out of my hand on my main phase. But they're also facing down lethal now. I guess they were screwed either way, but that was pretty strange.